and welcome to Because School Means More, the podcast where we explore what true inclusion looks like in schools and how we can make it a reality. Each episode will share real stories, practical strategies and insights from schools that are leading the way in inclusive education. Whether you're an educator, a parent or someone passionate about inclusion, this podcast is for you. Everyone is welcome here. Because School Means More is brought to you by the Inclusion Partnership. My name's Jo Wilkinson and I'm the Inclusion Partnership Manager and podcast host. I'm joined by some co-hosts and guests for each episode. Our mission is to create real change by building an inclusion movement, a network of schools and organisations committed to inclusive relationships and inclusive provision for every child. Join us as we break down barriers, share success stories and work together to build schools where everyone belongs.
Because school means more.
Hi, welcome to today's episode of Because School Means More. We've got a room full of colleagues here that have been kind enough to come and join us and talk to us all about the Boys Impact Hub work that have been taking place in Derby. So we'll do some quick introductions and then we'll get started. So I'll start with myself and we'll work our way around the table. My name's Jo Wilkinson. I am the podcast host and Inclusion Partnership Manager. Over to you, Emma.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. My name's Emma Walker. I am the area manager for North Nottinghamshire for DANCOP, which is the Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire Collaborative Outreach Partnership, a Uni Connect programme.
Easy for you to say.
Morning everyone, I'm Claire Moody. I'm Head of History and Religious Studies and also Pupil Premium Lead at Murray Park Community School out in Mickleover.
Hi, I'm Tom Zettel. I'm teaching at Chellaston Religious Studies. I'm also a psychotherapist in private practice.
Hello, I'm Danielle Leahy. I'm an assistant head teacher at Chellaston Academy.
Morning all, I'm Phil Smith. I am Jo's co-host. Very privileged to do that and also chair of the Inclusion Strategy Group. I think now we've all done introductions, I'm really excited for this one this morning, Jo. I don't know about you, but let's get everybody warmed up. So we're going to start in with a check-in question. So Tom, because you're closest to the wheel, just give it a spin for us, please.
11.
Question 11.
Question 11.
So, question 11 is, what's something that always makes you smile? So we'll start with you, Tom, since you spun the wheel first.
Oh, gosh. What makes me smile is seeing my children playing nicely together. It always gives me great joy because it doesn't happen very often. But yeah, that's something that really brings a smile to my face.
Danielle.
I was going to go similar, but I'm going to go my dog. Actually, my dog always makes me smile. Yes, there's,
Guaranteed.
Even in moments of frustration, he is just brilliant.
I'm sure your children will be delighted to hear
Well,
that.
they fully know there's a pecking order, and they fully know that they are below him in that order.
Emma and Claire, who's going to go first?
I was also going to say my dog, so I'm going to have to go for the reserve one. What makes me smile is when you just go somewhere for the day and you see a bookshop in the distance and then a cafe next to it, and you just envisioning that cup of coffee, bit of cake and a book. That always makes me smile, definitely.
Literally all my options have been covered now. But I'll go back to the number one, which is my little boy, who is unintentionally hilarious, I think. So yeah, always makes me smile.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Let's do one more. So, Claire, can
do
you
want to
spin
spin
the
the
wheel?
wheel?
Okay.
Let's hope it's not 11 again.
Oh, 12 this time.
Nice, easy one. Tom, we might as well start with you.
Go on.
Are you a beach holiday or a city break kind of guy?
Yeah, I did think about this one this morning. I'm kind of conflicted. I like the beach because I love swimming in the sea, but I'm kind of more interested in city life, I think, ultimately. I find it more engaging to wander around little streets and find little places to eat and get drinks. And,
Nice.
yeah, more my cup of tea, I think.
I love the beach, but I don't like sand. So I'm going to go city.
Okay.
Similar reasons. I love looking at buildings these days, which I never thought I'd become that person, but I am. So yeah, city breaks.
Right. Right.
City break. I think as a historian, I just love going to like the cities and just walking
Exploring.
around museums, things like that. I do like a beach holiday, but I have to be in the mood for it, I think. I have to really build up for that.
Yeah, I think I like both, but I'm going to go beach. I often say I was born in the wrong climate, and just being on a beach is my idea of heaven, really. So yeah, definitely a beach holiday for me.
Brilliant. Some nice little check-in questions there. So we're going to move on to just talking about the context. So first of all, I'm going to ask yourself, Emma, just to explain the context from around the project and how it came about in Derby, and before we then ask schools to share their context and then do the storytelling part. So just tell us a little bit about the Boys Impact Hub.
So I'll try and give a very brief overview. Boys Impact is the brainchild of Dr. Alex Blower, who is a research fellow down in Arts University Bournemouth. We know in education that there is a long-standing, persistent sort of challenge in GCSE outcomes of boys on free school meals versus other learners. And what Alex wanted to do was really find out what was going on to try and challenge that situation, and how we could start to really build a picture of what's working to close that gap, and how we can then scale that and use that knowledge and try and really impact this situation. It's a persistent issue, and there's so much good work going on. We just need to harness it. So the way that we do that is via regional hubs across the country. So there's 16 across the UK. We decided to create our regional hub across Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire because we'd spoken to a lot of the schools who were doing fantastic work, and we just needed a way to bring all of that evidence together to show and to really showcase what schools are doing in this space to challenge this and to really make an impact. So happily, Dancop were able to fund for the hub some small project funds, and we opened out to schools to sort of say what interventions would you like to implement and to try and impact for these boys and young men. And we got some fantastic ideas come back. So happily, we were able to fund 7 projects across the full region. But for Derby City, we've got 3 schools that are going forward with projects this year. And they are all different, which is amazing. We have got some common threads, but they are all different. The thing that unites everything that Boys Impact does is a set of relational principles, because it's no surprise to us all that when you ask boys and young men what's going to impact their educational journey the most, it is their relationship with educators. And so we as Boys Impact use a set of principles which came out of a longitudinal action research project in Northern Ireland called Taking Boys Seriously. And they sort of came up with these 10 principles around relational education, which aren't groundbreaking in themselves. You don't read them and think, as a practitioner, you read them and think, well, I do all of those.
Yeah.
And we do. But the idea of taking boys seriously is that the intentionality of implementing them is what's going to make that difference. So all of our projects going on have got the Taking Boys Seriously principles woven into them. And that's how we're going to evidence the impact, really. We're going to see how these boys have sort of progressed against those principles.
And I think just before we get into the storytelling, I think it'd be quite useful for the listeners to understand the schools that those projects have gone into. So probably wise if we start with Chellaston and go around this way. Just a brief overview of context of your school, and I suppose why there was that connection with the Boys Impact Hub.
Okay.
You go.
Okay. So we have approximately 20% free school meals, children at our school, and our focus was in terms of academic outcomes. To be fair, to start off with, wasn't it? In terms of, we'd noticed that our boys were tailoring off in comparison to some of the girls, and one of the things that was for was their literacy levels. So one of the projects that we picked up lower school was focusing purely on how we could get boys more engaged in reading and therefore more engaged in the curriculum, and hope therefore that had a positive impact on behaviours and confidence in themselves. That was one of them. And then the other one was in terms of just making boys more aware of kind of who they are, where they sit and
I
stand.
think that's fair. Like promoting their ability to be aware of the emotions that they're feeling or advocate for themselves, take more meaningful decisions as they navigate their path through the school day, build more constructive relationships with one another and the staff they work with. I think that's some of the outcomes we were hoping for. Yeah.
Great. What about Murray Park?
So Murray Park is a little bit higher in terms of their PP percentages. We're sitting around 36% of our students who are pupil premium. And our school is based almost like on the borderline between two different areas within Mickleover. So you've got Mickleover on one side, which is predominantly kind of lower middle class. And then you've got Mackworth Estate, which is where the majority of our students come from. So we've got quite a unique mixture of students within our school. A lot of them have got support from home, maybe positive parental engagement with the school, whereas a lot of our other students don't have that. So what we found is that with our cohort, the further they get along school years towards year 11, you have a real split between those who are consistently pushing themselves, accessing extra things outside of school, extra resources. And then for the other half, they're kind of saying, well, I can get a 3 and that's it. And they're just coasting through. And that's particularly the case for boys as we got into year 11. So that's kind of the problem that we identified. And that was something we've identified previous years. And this year we've used the funding from DanCop to really target that area.
Right.
And Emma, do you want to just mention the Benrose School as the other school that are part of this pilot work?
Yeah, I feel the pressure talking on
I'm
behalf of
gonna
the school. So the Benrose School is a fantastic school. It's large and its cohort is really quite diverse. So you know the makeup of its students, we've got lots of different pockets of that sort of community that it's representing. One of their projects, they've been doing work for a while, but one of their projects focuses around literacy, and so it's got a sort of similarity, a crossover with the Chellaston project about developing that love of reading, really, and the desire to actually read, and trying to find out from the boys really where that limitation came from, that they maybe don't engage as well. So the work's taking place primarily with year 8 and 9 boys at the Benrose School, though there is other boys impact work going on in the school with a group of year 11 boys as well.
Well, in Chellaston, we are working with year 10 and 11 boys. We see them in groups of 4 or 5. We have 5 groups over one day.
Okay.
They're taken. We change the actual period they miss when we're on a rota, so they're not missing too much curriculum time. And they're coming in, and the central principle of what I'm doing with these young people is trying to give them a feeling of psychological safety, so that they can explore with greater confidence and authenticity what's going on for them in their daily experiences. And the way that I did that was by doing team building activities, really, for the first 3 sessions, and then playing games and creating opportunities to deliver what Carl Rogers calls the core conditions, which are empathy. So really trying to understand what it's like to be somebody else, which is a tremendously powerful tool when it's used in the right way. Something that I've employed in the classroom as well to great effect. Unconditional positive regard, which is accepting someone's viewpoint without judging it or evaluating it, and trying to allow it to be theirs. So that gives the person the sensation of being heard and understood, which is dignifying them and giving them respect. Mm-hmm. And while you're doing that, you're doing it in a genuine way. You're doing it without any kind of teacher guard up. You're just being you. And what the psychological theory says is that if you deliver those things, then change necessarily happens. What happens is people feel increasingly safe, and then can come out from their defensive shell and say, well, here I am, this is what it's like to be me. These are my hopes, these are my fears, these are the things that concern me, these are the obstacles in my life. And what we're finding is that's exactly what's happening as the groups progress. People are feeling safer, are beginning to share more about their private lives, what their family life is like, how they really feel about school, what they think will happen to them in the future. So yeah, that gives you some kind of idea about yeah.
Our secondary project then is with the year 7 and 8 boys for reading, and the main focus of that again was confidence and engagement, not just with the boys themselves, but actually their parents. So we found that often, not always, but often these parents would be receiving more negative style phone calls, and therefore they themselves were becoming disaffected with school's expectations. So by taking these boys out twice a week, working in small groups, sometimes on phonics, sometimes on reading fluency, and there was a reticence to begin with, of course, but as they've gone along, we've invited parents into school to join us in those phonics sessions, into the library space. That's been really positive, and we've taken them on trips where they've chosen their own text from Waterstones. It's been purchased for them. We've then gone to a cafe, again, where the parents have been invited in, and the parents have sat and read with their young people. Every single one of them had a representative there, which was magical.
Yeah.
And we're at a point where some of our parents are saying, when are we coming next in? When are we back into the library? And so we've created a safe space for them. They come straight in through the front of school, and we're lucky that the lift goes immediately to the library. But nonetheless,
where else would it go?
Where else would it go? It's a magical space. So in that sense, we're building not just the relationship with boys, but with their parents and carers as well. And in addition to that, this year, actually our governing body are also going to join us on the trip and take part in that as well. Wow. So yeah, really exciting.
Wow.
And can I just ask, how have you gone about identifying the young people and the boys to be part of both of those programmes at Chellaston?
So for the year 7 and 8 boys, it was primarily based on reading scores.
Yeah.
And then we looked at some diagnostic testing, and the majority of them were free school meal boys anyway. And we decided that, that's who we were going to focus on. So one group in year 7, one group in year 8. The impact that it's having is confidence in a classroom, and some teachers anecdotally are starting to say, they've just put their hand up, or they asked if they could read out loud. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
So it feels like they were the right group of boys. They were also boys who would say, we don't read and we don't enjoy reading, and these are our reasons why, or I'm never going to be able to read. And, they really were starting with this base level of confidence that they felt their academic career was very different to all of the other children around them. They didn't recognise where they sat in their reading journey, and now they're starting to own it and go, I'm a reader too. It might look a little bit different, but I'm doing it and I'm owning it. And yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
For year 11, we noticed that it was mainly our HPA students who were falling a little bit behind. And then when we came to look at our free school meal boys, we recognised there was only one HPA PP boy. So we said, okay, well, let's focus on our middle prior retainers then. So it was our middle prior retainers in year 11 and our higher prior retainers in year 10. And we decided to put them together, didn't we? And kind of run a bit of an experiment in terms of having these two groups of children working alongside each other, as opposed to keeping them as separate cohorts.
What we found when we actually did a trip to Nottingham Trent,
We did.
which was a great day out for that group. But what we found was the young people gravitated into their own social circles, and then it was revealed to me that that's actually what if we'd had that information, that would have been a good way to start, because they already have then the connection that you're looking for.
Yeah.
We kind of mixed it up, and we spent maybe 3 or 4 sessions actually building up a team rapport that could have been there a lot earlier, perhaps.
Okay.
What was identified out of that was, we'd come across this concept of poor and rich poor, hadn't we? And we hadn't categorized the boys in that way in any way. But in terms of aspirations, it became really clear that our year 10s, those higher priority attainers, fell into more of this banded idea of they had aspirations and they wanted to go to university and they were very much behind it. Their parents were doing everything they could to showcase that pathway, whereas our middle priority attainers were very much anti to begin with, I think it's fair to say. And by the end of the day, we're recognising actually that it could be a potential for them. And, that what was available to them.
It was a
something
palpable
they
shift
hadn't
that you could
considered.
feel, and the people that, I have this idea of the educational project, which is the idea that education is in itself an inherently valuable thing that's going to enhance somebody's life prospects. It's a growthful thing that you kind of use exams to measure, but actually what is taking place is something much larger than that.
I love that.
And people are either buying into that or they are not. And at Charleston, we're kind of lucky that in any given class that you're teaching, the majority of people are buying into it. And of course, if you've got a room full of people that are buying into it, then teaching's just a joy, right? It's like getting into a Ferrari and putting your foot down because you're thinking, yeah, this is it, this is what it's for. But then if you have people in the room for whatever reason, which is nearly always a good reason, by the way, that they don't buy into the project, and then of course, they've got no investment in what's happening because it's safer for them to not risk feeling vulnerable by finding out they're not good at something and having a laugh with a friend or something, because that's what makes sense to them right there. So what we found in the group work is that those boys really giving them a boundaried space where they could go, do you know what, I find school really hard and I don't get a lot out of it and I don't see what it's for.
And they no longer have to mask that.
And they don't have to mask it, and they can actually talk about the importance of relationships. What you find out is that the teachers that are prepared to view them with dignity and respect and try and help them are the ones that they will try for, even though it hurts. And the ones that they feel, okay, well, I'm just being judged here all the time, and there's not really much connection. They just are turned off completely. And so it shows you the power of having a positive relationship.
Amazing. And I'm kind of conflicted now. Do we move on to Murray Park with regards to theirs, or do we almost finish it off and go, so what have you seen? And I think let's just finish those two projects off first, because, I'm actually hooked with what you're saying, and I'm sure our listeners are now keen to know, so what's happened now?
What have you learned
What
from
have you seen? What have we learned?
So what we're seeing with the year 7 and 8 boys is a sense of happiness in themselves is primarily the I think the most obvious thing.
That's so powerful.
Huge, because some of them have gone from feeling like the classroom just isn't for them, like they cannot access anything that's put in front of them, and therefore they may have made choice behaviours to have them no longer in that learning space perhaps. Whereas now they just feel that they are more able to access a wider range of material to them. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done for them. We're not saying that this gap is suddenly miraculously closed, but in terms of their sense of self and their confidence, it's huge. To begin with, they would need a little bit of coaxing to go to some of the sessions. Now they just turn up, of their own accord. One of them started attending the library at break times to take books out. They get excited by the idea of being given a book from the vending machine. So, we can talk about this in terms of measurable progress from a phonics score. That's clear, but it's more about how they feel and about their relationships with their own parents and carers. Because, we launched a whole school reading site. We're using Sparks Reader now. And we were concerned about how parents would feel about supporting these young boys in this process. So again, getting them in, showing them, and just walking them through it again is just meant that there's more of a sense of calm and more of a sense of acceptance of school. So
and I think you've put that across beautifully, and we often talk in these podcasts that it's all about feeling, isn't it? And it's very hard sometimes to capture and measure through data, and it sounds like that's starting to happen, and you've got that, but more often than not, it's about how we feel and how those young people feel now at school, and the snowball effect from that then in terms of their sense of belonging at school, and that then enables them to go on and thrive.
Absolutely.
So that bit of storytelling has been so lovely to hear from.
And there's a lot of crossover with the boys group to do with confidence, but it's again so hard to measure. There so many factors that go into how someone's performing.
And you can't measure some of it.
And you can't measure some of it. And so we're hearing anecdotal things, teachers coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I've really seen a change in this person." But then is that because of the group work, or we don't really know?
We don't know. But
I think the big test will be to actually ask the people that have taken part in it and say, well, you know, how did you find it? Was it something you got something out of? A big thing is that I was absolutely convinced that the boys had to consent. All right, so they have the option to not come. And what we've had is an amazing attendance, right? So people are voting with their feet. They're coming every week and looking forward to it. There's a buzz about it when they're coming in. What are we doing? What's going on? But what's unclear is how it's translating into the wider school environment. I mean, that's very difficult to measure.
But I think that you've got people turning up of their own accord and doing those things. That tends, you know, that's not soft data.
No.
That's those young people having that sense of belonging. And Joe's already said it. You know, it's our first charter priority, isn't it, to bring belonging? But it's really heartening to hear what's going on and the impact it's having.
Yeah.
And very much, Tom, you started by talking about building that relationship with those young people and empathising and making it a safe space. And I think that was a really important part of that conversation, because that then helped those young people to engage and to feel secure, and that they could let the guard down and really open up to how they were feeling. So
and those principles can be employed in the classroom. They don't have to be employed in focus groups. You know, that I found when I started the course at the University of Nottingham to become a therapist, changed my teaching overnight, because I went back into the classroom and immediately saw the power dynamic as me as the adult, educated, middle class
that sounds
man.
like a whole other podcast.
Like standing there in the power dynamic and then trying to say, I'm going to drag you through learning rather than can I sit alongside you and learn with you and then facilitate a learning environment. And that's a completely different shift. And then if you see the reaction you get from young people when you're prepared to take that risk.
Fascinating.
Amazing. Thank you.
Should we ask Claire then to talk a little bit more about Murray Park and the journey that you've been on?
Yeah.
Just to set the scene a little bit around your story.
Yeah, so our project is very much just centred around 13 Year 11 boys. The process of choosing them is they fell within the category of free school meals, but they also, as individuals, we could see that they needed a little bit of a boost in these final few months of Year 11, where there's a tendency for certain people to think the end is too far away, it's just too much, I've done okay, I'm going to leave it there. And so these 13 boys were identified as having the potential to do that over the next few months. So we worked closely with the pastoral team to talk about the suitability of these students to take part in the project. And the project is all based around assertive mentoring. So using the boys' principles, we have got volunteer staff members. So they are a mixture of pastoral, teachers, support staff. They volunteered to do weekly mentoring sessions with these young boys, and each session, each weekly focus has a principle of the taking boys seriously kind of woven into it. So there are kind of semi-structured tasks that they do, some questions, some targets that they set for next lesson or next time they meet. So if the focus for that was a mock reflection, they would have some questions, some kind of sentences that they could kind of start with and ease the conversation with the students in. And then they would have an aim for next lesson or next session, which would be think about your top 3 subjects and let's design a plan of action for those top 3 subjects that you're wanting to focus on for next time. But alongside the weekly mentoring we've been doing, we've had external workshops come in who have been very much focused on building resilience, team building, increased communication, because alongside their academic tendencies to kind of give up, we also found that a lot of them just didn't have that resilience. They didn't have that desire to go out into the workplace and work within a team to kind of push themselves to get those future promotions, those future career opportunities. So we've had a few different workshops. We've had things such as a problem-solving escape room come to the school. And it was we decided that it was going to be
They're not still there, are they?
They were very good. They got out very quickly. But it was the theme of a bank heist, and they had to use a mixture of math, statistics to try and figure out how to kind of complete this big escape room box. And we chose that theme for that escape room because a lot of them, through the one-to-one career sessions that they've had as part of the assertive mentoring, the majority of them said they wanted to go into things such as engineering and maths-based or science-based career paths. So we went for that theme because it hit the majority, and they all did fantastic. They worked together. There was a few groups where there was certain students who really showed leadership skills. They decided to get everyone together, get a plan of action, and they were the first ones to complete the escape room. And then just yesterday, we took them over to Cannock and we did a Go Ape team building day. And again, we've got some students there who, when we said, oh, you're going to go up on the high ropes and you're going to go across this agility course, they absolutely froze. They did not want to do it. And for a lot of these boys as well, as part of that taking boys seriously principle, they showed real vulnerability. They're around their friends and they were shaking with fear at going down this zip line. And I think it was a great opportunity for the boys to use a lot of the things that we've been talking about with them for the past few weeks, because they started encouraging them. They started supporting their friends. They started using communication from all the team building activities to say, oh no, you do this, take it one step at a time, do that, you can do this. So as we're kind of coming to the end of this project, we're seeing, again, that non-measurable evidence that these changes have worked. They are starting to talk more. They are starting to support each other now as peers a little bit better. And it was really great to see that yesterday and to see that they could work together to complete this task. And then after Easter, we've got a few more sessions. We've got a parental engagement session where the parents are going to come in and meet with the mentors, share some of the slideshows, some of the videos of what they've been doing the past few sessions, have coffee, have cake, and then they can sit down. And as it's 3 weeks before their first exam, they're going to sit down and they're going to talk with their parents and carers about what their plans are for tackling these exams and making sure that they come out of this summer happier, more confident, and sure of what they're going to do and how they're going to get to that next step of their kind of post-16 life. So yeah, that's a little bit about the project.
And you know, I know obviously they've not started their exams yet, or some of those activities haven't happened, but are you seeing some benefits already in and around school with those young people? Yeah,
so the way that the project's fallen means that we've got the measurable data there. So they did a form of formal in-class assessments in November, and then they did mock 2 around January. So we've got data to kind of prove that there's a little bit of a shift there. They have made some improvements. We've got other assessment points as well to prove that. But again, it's that non-measurable data where you've got mentors coming up to me and saying, oh, I spoke with so-and-so last week, and they keep coming up and saying, when are we meeting again? When's our next meeting? What are we going to do this time? And so the mentors are coming up and saying that they've got really positive experiences. The students themselves are, demonstrating positive attitudes. Their behaviour scores have kind of shown that there's less disruption in lesson. There's higher attendance for some of them that weren't attending before.
Yeah, really well.
Wow. So again, there's, when you're going through this kind of data analysis, you can make links and correlations between what you're doing with the project. There is, but you can't say that it's just because of this project, but any kind of impact, any kind of positive impact that might be linked to this project is what we're looking for. And by the time we get to exam results in the summer, we'll obviously have the true measure of how it's impacted them academically, but also just if they're a little bit more confident going out into college or to an apprenticeship or a workplace, and they've got that confidence because they've
to be ambitious and to be brave,
and because of the fact that they did that zip wire, and they're thinking about that time they overcame a real fear, they accomplished something that they can then apply to the real world. Then I would see that as a success.
A pure testament of connection and belonging.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Emma, you have to share a little bit about Bemrose and their project.
Yeah, but first, can I just say my heart is absolutely bursting.
Yeah.
Because I obviously laid out Boys Impact from we're trying to have this sort of data impact, but the bigger picture and the much more important picture, and that's why it's based on the relational principles, is that we just want happy, healthy boys, don't we? That's, this holistic approach the academic is that one part, but actually we're viewing these boys as the individuals they are, coming with their individual background and baggage and everything that makes them, that's who we're working with on a day-to-day basis. So hearing what's going on is just...
And that's why these
it's
conversations are so
fantastic.
important. You know, it's absolute gold dust, isn't it?
It really
to
is.
hear this, for
Beautiful,
them to be able to
yeah.
share it is properly beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, and the qualitative bits that you've been throwing in there. You know, we're in education, we like the hard data, but I do think the qualitative stuff is the bit that really makes your heart sing, isn't it? And that's why you do what you do and work with these young people. So yeah, it's lovely to hear. So I'll briefly talk about the Benrose project. So this has actually been led by Anna Blore, which is who is the literacy lead practitioner for the Benrose School. And it's called Ready to Read. So there's a group of Year 8 and Year 9 boys. They did work individually yesterday in their year groups, and I'll talk to you a bit about what I saw them do yesterday in a while, but just to sort of lay out the project. So they are going to work with an author, Ashley Hickson Lovance, who and they're going to work around his book Wild East. So Wild East is a book written in almost verse, I want to say, and Ashley is a stunning author, but also performer. So he really uses his work and engages with learners through reading his work aloud, and then extending that into allowing them to start some creative writing. So the boys all had a workshop with Ashley. They've then been given a copy of his book, and they're going to work in small groups, reading groups, to read his book over sessions that they call DEAR, Drop Everything and Read. And they are all led by a member of staff. So yesterday they got given their groups and they were very excited to find out which member of staff. And this goes right through SLT. You know, everyone is taking part in this across the school, which is a real community sort of drive to the project, which is fantastic. So I was fortunate enough to see the workshop yesterday, and I will say that the groups are quite diverse. So in terms of selection, I don't think it was just reading age. I definitely saw that there was a huge gap in the reading ages of the cohort. There was a definite, I would say, though obviously these boys are eligible for free school meals, there was also a notable sort of how they were arriving at school, shall we say. And it was amazing to see the staff faces when these boys were engaging in the project. The librarian was aghast at some of the boys who were repeatedly putting their hand up. There was a young man with an EHCP in the room who, with no additional support, was engaging in the creativity of the session with such ease. It was mind-blowing. And there was a boy with very poor attendance history. He had his hand up first for almost every interaction.
Yes.
And I will say that they came out with a piece of work at the end of the workshop, and I was sat with someone from the police who had a background that I would have thought, well, this isn't someone who will be moved easily, shall we say. We were both sobbing, literally openly sobbing with what the boys were coming out with. It was amazing. And I think the thing that I'll take away from that is proof that within a 2-hour space of time, if you create the safe space, the psychological safety, if you've got those building blocks and you ask boys to talk, they will. And that when they do, there's something to hear and we need to listen. And I came away thinking, well, as with all of these stories, if we're impacting on young people in any way, shape or form that they're going to carry forward into their wider life. Yes, their educational career, but wider. Or they're going to take home and it's going to filter into the community. Their relationships with others, boys and girls, how they interact with each other, then
That's life-changing.
It's life-changing, it absolutely
Sounds
is.
amazing.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
So some really inspiring stories there, and thank you so much for sharing them. I'm going to move on and ask a question then about what's your proudest moment around your particular project that you've led on, or is there a young person that really resonates with you that you've really seen the difference that it's made? Danielle?
Oh, proudest moment I think would be in the book cafe, having a parent or carer for every young person sat reading in a public open space. No stigma attached. Didn't matter what the book was. The fact is, it was something that we could just step back from and just note that it was happening, and it was just beautiful. And these boys were 100% immersed in it. To think, if we'd asked them that 6 months prior, can you see yourself doing that? I perhaps can't repeat some of the phrases that they may have said, but the fact is they did, and they loved it. It was beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. Tom?
Yeah, I think I'm going to choose a couple of moments where just organically out of the session, somebody's chosen to share something which is a moment of great vulnerability for them. And it takes such a lot of risk for someone to do that, especially at that age in front of people that are not necessarily friends with, and to talk honestly and openly about how you feel about something. It doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen very often for us. We're talking about an environment at school, which is can be quite hostile sometimes and quite difficult to navigate for people. So to have that moment where someone's able to say, "This is really what I'm feeling right now," and for it to be received by the other students, right? So they were able to engage with it and let it be there, not try and fix it.
Wow.
And go, that's how he's feeling right now about something that's happening in his home
Being
life.
present in that moment.
And being present in that, that's just an incredible thing that you would never expect really to have happening in a school.
And generally something we all struggle with in society today.
I think
isn't
so.
it?
Yeah, exactly. And the outcome really is for that person to have a chance to do that and then not feel shame.
And grow from that
and actually go, that hasn't collapsed in on me. And it hasn't been leaked out to the school.
Yeah.
That then promotes the prospect that they might do it again.
Empowering. Yeah. Claire, any examples you want to share? Or
I think there's again something very similar. Just this idea of seeing some of these boys really happy, because a lot of these boys aren't happy when it comes to school because they've had to face so many barriers. And I think they identify that they've got to continue facing so many barriers before they leave school at the end of year 11. And to see them relaxed and happy. So there's a couple of boys who, through the escape room, through the workshop, through the experience yesterday, who actually came out and they were just, I've never seen them really smile like that and laugh that much, because they found something they were good at. And even with that escape room, even though it was maths themed and it was still quite challenging, they still really enjoyed it and they were proud of themselves at the end of that. And I think we don't see that enough because, again, for the students that are involved in this project, sometimes they've maybe had too many instances where they've been told they need to do better. They've still got this to do. And actually for this project, it's just given opportunities to just be happy with what they've achieved.
Right.
And that was just really nice that they've just been proud of themselves. And we can sit there and say, we're proud of you because that was an amazing thing you've just done. So yeah, I hope that continues, but that's just been one of the nice moments that we've seen.
Emma.
Yeah, I think I'll use the young man I referred to yesterday who hadn't historically wanted to attend school, and he shared a poem. So Ashley does a poem with all of the learners called I Come From, and they have to really dig deep about where they come from and what they're coming from, including feelings, including people, including surroundings. And the fact that he shared this with the whole group and did move a lot of people to tears, but that the boys, I think Tom's words are echoing, sort of, they just accepted and then wanted to share their own experience.
Wow.
And just that ability that, you know, to have that space to do that. I only hope through the rest of the project and the sort of reading the story together that stays with him and he continues to re-engage and sort of grow in confidence to be open, be him, just present as him.
And I think to keep pulling on that for our listeners, I think this is possibly an opportunity for the four of you to work together. I think our listeners would really like to know, what would your advice be? What would your top tips be? Because the data around boys, particularly, you know, white British boys as well, is there. We know that. You guys are having some, you know, it's been an emotional morning, you know, having some real genuine impact. So for our listeners out there, what would your advice be for other schools and other organisations to engage?
I think be brave. If you think it's going to work, go for it. You know, what have you got to lose? And I think the reason that both of our projects are successful is that we reached out and phoned parents. You know, an email wasn't going to cut what we wanted to try and achieve. And again, if we're talking about a sense of belonging and that personal connection, speak to somebody in person. And I think that was our initial thing that really helped get our projects off the ground, actually.
And also transparency.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not up to anything.
Yeah.
Where you're saying to someone,
Yeah,
I've got an agenda for you because you're not quite right just yet. And so I'm going to try and alter you to be
Or
more
we're
like,
labelling you,
or
for
we're
example.
labelling, or you
Absolutely.
need to be a bit more like me, or something like that. And
I like that perspective.
students are very sensitive to that. So actually just laying all your cards on the table and going, okay, this is what it is.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it?
Yeah.
And I think that
And we'll do it together.
we'll do it together. And there's something about the leveling up of the power dynamic, which is healthy.
I
in
like
there.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
really,
really like
really
that.
great tip.
I think for my advice would be for schools that are maybe looking to run small projects like this within house. I think having that awareness that your aims for what you're wanting to get out of the project might not always align with what maybe the students want to get out of the project. So I think before you actually sit down and say, well, we want a project, say, to higher reading ages, actually talk to the students, talk to parents and carers and think about what their perspective is before you then start creating your project. Because it's really easy for schools to say, our aims are these, we're going to do a project doing this, and that's what we're going to look to achieve. But actually, that's not always the reality. It needs to be led by the community. It needs to be led by the parents, led by the students, and thinking about what they want to take out of
That
this project. Yeah, rather than just always coming from the top down. It needs to be.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And Emma, you're lucky enough to oversee regional delivery, but also hear from national projects and other examples. Have you got any top tips you want to share?
Top tip is come and join the hub. We are a community of practice. This is what we do.
Yeah, and it's ongoing.
It's ongoing. And I think the really important thing to note is that interventions, yes, they take a lot of time and effort and planning, and we know that, but they don't need to be high cost. And yes, we've been fortunate enough to fund some projects, but actually some of these are scalable and can take place in schools without that additional funding. I think coming along to the hub meetings, sharing, I think it's really important as well, that bravery aspect, sharing what hasn't worked. As Claire said, sharing where, as the educators, our aims can be wildly out of whack with the learners is really important. And sharing the challenges, the pitfalls, is as important as saying, wow, this is really impactful. So I think being part of the community that we're trying to build with this hub, but also taking those relational principles and looking at how you're already, using them as a school, as a staff, and where they can be amplified through the curriculum. Because I think there's already so much going on. You don't need to change. things. We just need to amplify it. So, for example, you know, my favourite taking boys seriously principle, I can have one, is valuing the voice of boys. And I think we've all got student voice going on. Learner voice is key. So where can we amplify that? Where can we sort of show what's already happening, how the boys are already achieving and feeling, and where we can be led by them? I think that co-creation is really what will sort of self-propel these ideas forward. So, yeah, join the hub.
And this becomes a bit of a close, really, and it's been an amazing podcast to listen to and hear about. Summarise what you think your next steps are. It sounds like this work is just going to continue to grow and develop, I'm assuming. Will it be about working with new groups of children or continuing to support the existing young people? Will they become role models for new children that come on board, maybe? Any particular plans for your next steps?
Well, I'm interested in the idea of, it takes a lot of training to become a psychotherapist, and I can only see so many groups with the principles of the person-centered approach. And so I'm kind of interested in, can I empower other people to facilitate groups using those principles of empathy, unconditional regard, and genuineness? Like, if those are qualities that you can build in other facilitators, they're not going to be therapists, but they're going to be able to deliver the same kind of psychological safety in a much wider scale. And so that's something I'm interested in seeing if it's possible.
I can't think of any organisation that wouldn't want that.
Absolutely.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the reading, so, you know, obviously the boys are not suddenly just going to get to the end of a year group and not need continued support.
There's no end to this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, to be able to see it through year on year and to build on that, but to use once the boys do get a little bit older, you know, we've got some peer reading schemes that work really, really well. And there's no reason why, you know, we wouldn't hope to think that these boys can use their experiences and their voice to enable younger children to access it sooner and, you know, just hit the ground running as quickly as possible. Yeah. So, yeah.
Anything you want to add, Claire?
I think for our context, it's about widening this mentoring scheme that we've got started, because I think the role of, between educator or the people who work within the school and some of these students is really valuable. And if we can extend that beyond year 11, maybe into year 10, maybe widen it out to other groups as well. I think that's the hope, and that's maybe the plan for future years, if we can make this almost like an embedded part of our school life, that we have this assertive mentoring. We've got students able to go to a trusted adult who can kind of give them that guidance, give them that extra support when they need it.
I love the linked element of it, because, you know, my experience of mentoring projects in schools is it's in silos. So there is a child or a group of children with one mentor, and they kind of don't touch base. But the fact that they then all come together, so it's still part of the same project, for me, I think gives it that extra edge. And I'm personally interested in seeing that in action. So yeah, that's great.
And I think everything we've heard this morning aligns so closely with the Inclusion Charter, key principles of that. This has all been about inclusive relationships, but also inclusive provision, and what we need to adapt there to make the two come together.
100%.
So a huge thank you for sharing those today. So, are we going to spin the wheel again?
I think
and
we
do
need
a
to check.
checkout
We need to
question?
check out. Come on, Tom. Responsibility's yours.
Go on then.
Give it a big spin.
Not 11.
There's new questions for this one, so
Oh,
we're
is
all
it?
right.
Okay. 12.
Prepped.
Again.
Okay. Oh, an interesting one.
Yeah.
If you could sum up your school in one word, what would that word be?
Silence.
Silence. We've stumped them.
I'm going to say potential.
Nice.
Nice.
It's really difficult.
Acceptance, I'm going to go for. I think more and more students and staff are becoming more accepting. Acceptance.
Brilliant.
I think, part of our school motto is this idea of like pride and being proud of where you come from and who you are and your experiences. So yeah, I'm going to say proud. We should be proud of Derby. They should be proud of the fact that they're from Derby and who they are as people.
Love that.
Shall we switch questions? Do one more question?
Yeah, why not?
Go on then, Claire, give it a spin and we'll do one more question.
Such gentle spinners this morning.
They are. Question 10. So, what's one thing you'd love every visitor to notice about your school?
I think I would love every visitor to notice just how brilliant our students are. All of our students have just got something amazing about them as individuals. They're so kind, they're so polite, they're just really good kids. So I'd love for every visitor to be able to kind of understand that and see that.
Yeah, you can't trump that really. I think that's true. I'd say that's true.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the sort of last tough question, which was, if your school had a motto for inclusion, what would that motto be? It can be a few words if that's easier than a motto as such, but
every single child matters.
Yeah.
At every moment of every day.
Yeah, everybody matters.
Everybody matters.
Yeah. Anything different to that, Claire? Or are we going to go with that one?
I'm not very wordy, but it'd be something about how just because you've got different starting points doesn't mean that you're always going to end. I think for some of our children, it's a case of they maybe feel like they can only be so ambitious, they can only achieve so much. So I think it would be, if I was a bit wordy, if I was an English teacher, this would be an easy one, and I could come up with something. But it's about thinking about their end goals and that they can all achieve brilliant things no matter what their starting points.
Yeah. And there's a lot in the education world at the moment, isn't there, about justice. We've gone from equity and equality, and there's a lot of conversations about actually we're trying to get justice. Links really closely to that. Ironically, not a charter word.
Well, no. Thank you so much. That's honestly been fascinating and really beautiful to hear those different approaches but that joint commitment. And clearly, you're all really passionate about the work that you do. You've been brave to come and join us today and be part of the podcast, but actually, more importantly, you've been brave to kind of have a go at piloting this work and going on that journey and to see what difference that makes.
And I think just to share that as well, because, every school, across Derby and wider than that have got the same challenges. So to share your story and what you're doing, we just hope that we're going to get some schools that are going to go, right, we're going to try this. We're going to try an element of that. And if we can do that, we're winning, aren't we?
Yeah, and please keep doing that amazing work because it's been really lovely to hear about it today. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
you. Everybody.
Well done.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of Because School Means More, brought to you by the Inclusion Partnership. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights, ideas and inspiration to help make schools more inclusive for everyone. Real change happens when we work together. So, if you're inspired by what you heard today, we'd love for you to be part of the inclusion movement. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Share this episode with colleagues and connect with the Inclusion Partnership. Thanks for listening.
Because school means more.